بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام.
Luqman the Wise, and his advice and his exhortation and his admonishment of and towards his son. So, there are different ways of tackling this topic, speaking on this subject. First and foremost is to speak about Luqman the Wise, Luqman al-Hakim. Who was he? Was he a prophet? First and foremost, was he a prophet? Secondly, whether we ask the question not just a tasab or bringing it up. Number two is, when did he live? If he was or wasn't a prophet, what time period did he live in? And what race did he come from? These things really don't have but so much significance, and the content of his wise counsel and the content of what he said to his son, that's the most important thing. However, from the concept of Mudarasatul Quran, studying the Quran, learning more facts, learning more information, there's always a benefit of learning about these other pieces of information and these other facts. So most of the ulama of Islam, they say that Luqman was not a prophet, and that he was just a righteous and wise man. As far as what time period he lived, then that's an even further discussion. And some of the ulama of Islam say that he was Nubian, that he came from Ard Nuba, he was Nubian, as far as his ancestry or heritage or his background. What's important is, as I just mentioned to you, is what he said to his son. That's the most important thing, and the most remarkable part of the story in discussing Luqman is what he said to his son and why he said that to his son. Now, in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he tells us, and he explains to us, that what we have been given, we've been given nothing more than the best, nothing less than the best. نَحْنُ نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ أَحْسَنَ الْقَصَصِ. Allah says, we give you, O Muhammad, the best stories. بِمَا أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ. For that which is given to you in this Quran that is revealed to you. وَإِن كُنْتَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ. And Allah says, and even though before we gave you the revelation, and before we explained to you these stories which are the best and most beautiful, you were unaware. You were unaware. And Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ مِنَ اللَّهِ. Who is better than Allah Azza wa Jalla in His judgment? وَمَنْ أَصْدَقُ مِنَ اللَّهِ قِيلًا. And who is more truth than Allah in His speech? And this includes and entails the best, the most truthful, the most honest, the wisest, ahsanu, the best in its wording, its content, its instruction, its benefit, and its eloquence. All of that is included in ahsanul qasas, the best of stories, the most thorough stories, the most truthful stories, the most honest stories, the wisest of stories, and the best, most eloquent, beautiful manner that it can be possibly presented. So all of that is included in ahsanul qasas, the best of all stories. And from the stories of the Quran, which are the best and the most thorough and the most beautiful, is the story of Luqman al-Hakim. Luqman al-Hakim. May Allah Azza wa Jalla be pleased with him, alayhi salam, etc. That's first and foremost. Secondly is the summary of the story. And thirdly, what are the main points of focus that we wish to discuss tonight regarding Luqman al-Hakim. As far as the summary of the story, khulasatul qissa wa khulasatul maw'idah, is that he gave his son an example of how to live and how to die. He told his son everything that he needed to hear with regards to the relationship that he has with his Lord, the relationship that he has with himself, and the relationship that he's going to have with people, other human beings. And there lies no doubt the teachings of the Sunnah and the teachings of the Quran. The teachings of the Quran and the teachings of the Sunnah are totally in harmony, in total harmony. The Messenger of Allah, he sums up the whole entire religion, and he sums up the things that you do, the people that you encounter, what you want to do as a Muslim living and breathing. اتق الله حيثما كنت واتبع السيئة الحسنة تمحها وخالق الناس بخلق حسن. He says, fear Allah wherever you are. If you do a bad deed, you make a mistake, immediately fix it with a good deed and treat people honorably. This sums up the relationship between the servant and his Lord. Ittaqillah, fear Allah. That is Allah's right for you to fear Him, to obey Him, to love Him, and to submit to Him no matter what the scenario, and no matter what the case, no matter where you are, no matter what the location. So that is the haqq of Allah. And that is the relationship that is between Allah and the servant and his Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَأَتْبِئِ السَّيِّئَةَ الْحَسَنَةَ تَمْحُهَا. And if you happen to make a mistake, you fall into a sin, you become victim of your human nature, then get up. Dust yourself off, brush yourself off, get right back into the fight, and fix what you did of bad. And that is by doing a hasana, which will erase the effect of the sayyah. And that is haqqul abd, haqqul insan. That is the right that your nafs has over yourself. Haqqul nafs. Your soul has a haqq upon you, and you're not to tarnish that right and disregard that right and disrespect that right. And then last but not least remains وَخَالِقِ النَّاسَ بِخُلُقٍ حَسَنٍ, and treat the people honorably. Don't treat the people in an average, mediocre way, let alone disrespect them, scorn them, look down upon them, hold them in contempt, thinking that you're better than them. وَخَالِقِ النَّاسَ بِخُلُقٍ حَسَنٍ. Have excellent moral character. And that is حُقُوقَ الْعِبَادِ, حَقُّ النَّاسِ, the rights that the people have over you. So the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, in this beautiful, beautiful hadith, he summarized all rights that are to be given and received. Fear Allah, give Allah His rights. Make tawbah, do good deeds, give your own nafs its rights, and treat the people in an honorable manner. And that is also found in the story of Luqman the Wise. So the summary of the whole entire story, regardless of reading from ayah and ayah, but the summary of the whole story is that he was a good and great father to his son. And he told his son what his son has to do, what his son has to perform, what his son should do, and what his son cannot do and should not do. That's the summary of it. Is that he told him to fear Allah, to obey Allah, do not oppress the rights of Allah, and do not oppress yourself, and for sure do not oppress the people. The next point, one of the most important parts of this story, is the beginning of the story. And that is the concept of al-hikmah, wisdom, which we say in the English language. Al-hikmah. What is al-hikmah? And what isn't hikmah? How do you obtain hikmah? Is it even possible for you to obtain it? Or is it given to you and granted to you as a gift, as we said earlier, with regards to guidance? And what is included in that word, wisdom? To be wise. Now, he who studies history and the history of the human being, despite the color, despite the language, despite the geographical location, despite the nature of those people and the time period of those people, wisdom and a person being wise is respected, is coveted all around the board. From the most savage and uncivilized people and the things that they did in the course of history, you'll find that the wise one, the wise elder, the wise leader, the wise chieftain, the wise warrior, whatever wisdom, even if it was manifested in witchcraft and sihr, but they had wisdom, they had experience, they were always at the summit of society and held in utmost regard. The warrior is one thing, the wealthy person is one thing, the handsome person is one thing, the one who's high-born, quote-unquote, is one thing, but the one who's wise and deep-minded is always respected. And this is a fact in all races and all cultures. People respect wisdom, and they respect the person who has been given that wisdom, and the one who shares that wisdom, however they manifest that wisdom, regardless of their religion, their creed, and their practice, etc. So al-hikmah, or wisdom, is something that we want to focus on tonight, bi-idhnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's the beginning of the story. As Allah says, and indeed we gave Luqman wisdom. Indeed, we have granted Luqman wisdom. That's what Allah says before He gets into Luqman speaking to his son. وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا, indeed we have given Luqman hikmah. And then immediately after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us, and He speaks to Luqman, and He speaks to us, He tells us what the duty is for that gift and the debt that is owed for Allah Azza wa Jalla blessing you with wisdom. So now let's ask ourselves the question, what is the word hikmah? What does it mean? It's mentioned in the Quran in many places. And there are many hadiths in which hikmah is used. Allah says, يُؤْتِ الْحِكْمَةَ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. Allah gives hikmah to whom He wills. And whoever is given hikmah, وَمَنْ يُؤْتِ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. Whoever is granted hikmah has been given a great gift. Similar to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri in the Sahih, in which the companions asked the Messenger of Allah ﷺ for sadaqah. فَأَعْطَاهُمْ, He gave them. And then He asked them for some more. فَأَعْطَاهُم, He gave them. ثُمَّ سَأَلُوهُ فَأَعْطَاهُم, and He asked them a third time, and He gave them. And then He said to the Sahaba, حَتَّى نَفِدَ مَا عِنْدَهُ, all of the wealth that He had, He wasted it in sadaqah, giving it to the Sahaba. He spent all of it, He gave it to them. And He said, مَا يَكُونُ لِي أو مَا يَكُونُ عِنْدِي مِنْ خَيْرٍ فَلَنْ أَدَّخِرَهُ عَلْكُمْ. He says, whatever wealth, and look, pay close attention how Allah called money khayr. He called it khayr. And this goes to show us, as we have explained to many classes and lessons before, those who say that money is bad and it's haram to have money and haram to be wealthy, they are not wise people. Money is a good thing. And Allah Azza wa Jalla, He called money khayr. He called it goodness when it's used and managed properly. But that's not the topic of our discussion. Al-Muhim, he says, whatever good I have, whatever wealth I have, I'll never hide it from you. And it shows us the transparency of the leader with his subjects. Don't hide things from the people. Be transparent in your dealings. Show them what is what. Whatever money I have, you have it. There's no coffer that I have. There's no bank. There's no chest of gold and silver that is being hidden from you. Whatever wealth I have, you have. And then He gave the Sahaba instructions about asking and begging. He gave them instructions about being patient. He says, مَنْ يَتَصَبَّرْ يُصَبِّرْهُ اللَّهُ. If you practice patience, Allah will give it to you. The highlighting point, what I'm trying to get to right now, when Allah says, وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. Whoever was given wisdom, he has been given a great deal of good. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, وَمَا أُعْطِيَ. He says, no one has been given عَطَاءً خَيْرٌ وَأَوْسَعٌ مِنَ الصَّبْرِ. The greatest gift that you can be handed is patience. And that's similar to what Allah says, and whoever is given wisdom, فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. And we all know, those who study the Quran Kareem, ماذا تفيد النكرة في سياق الإثبات. When Allah mentions an indefinite noun affirming something, Allah doesn't say فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ الْخَيْرَ الْكَثِيرِ. خَيْرًا. He's been given a great deal of good in all aspects. So, Allah Azza wa Jalla, He mentions this word al-hikmah in many verses in the Quran. And oftentimes it has different meanings. Ibrahim and Ismail, with يَرْفَعُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ الْقَوَائِدَ مِنَ الْبَيْتِ. And remember when Abraham and Ishmael were erecting the foundations of the Kaaba, and they asked Allah to accept from them, and to make them Muslims, and to accept their repentance. And they made a supplication, رَبَّنَا وَضَعْ فِيهِمْ. Oh Allah, send among these people a messenger who's from them, the ancestors of the Arabs. And what will He do? He will recite to them your verses. He will purify them and cleanse them. And He will teach them the book and the hikmah. The book and the hikmah. Right. So the word hikmah is mentioned in the Quran in more than one place. As far as the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, there's also mentioned in several narrations. From those narrations is the report of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu in the Sahih, in which the Prophet ﷺ, he says, لا حسد إلا في اثنتين. He says there can be no envy in Islam. You're not allowed to envy any Muslim and to be jealous of any Muslim unless one or two people. One or two people. And from those two people whom you're allowed to envy, quote unquote, is رَجُلٌ أَتَاهُ اللَّهُ الْحِكْمَةِ فهو يعلمها ويقضي بها أو فهو يقضي بها ويعلمها الناس أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. The first of the two people whom you are allowed to envy is a man who's been given hikmah. And what does he do with this hikmah? He teaches it to the people ويقضي بها, and he uses it as a means of judgment. People come and they differ and they fight over things, and he gives them hikmah. He gives them hikmah. So in this hadith, is this the same meaning of وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ? He teaches them the book and hikmah, وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ, and purifies them? Or is it a different meaning? We know the science of the Quran, and it's very important for every Muslim to know this, even layman Muslims, those who don't study the Arabic language, is that the Quran uses words and terms and different meanings. Sometimes they're synonymous, and sometimes they have different meanings and different usages. So what's meant by this word hikmah in Arabic? And what's meant by this word in English, wisdom? And what does it mean to be wise? So I thought we should discuss this first before we even get into the story of Luqman. And that is because that is one of the highlighting features of that story, is that Luqman was wise. So wise that they called him Luqman al-Hakim. They didn't call him Luqman the learned, Luqman the elder, Luqman the strong. They called him Luqman al-Hakim, meaning that was the greatest of his characteristics. So there lies no doubt the pinnacle and the summit of the story of Luqman the Wise is what? Is wisdom. How to obtain it and what to do with it when you have it. And the greatest thing that you can do with wisdom is pass it on to the next generation. Pass it on to your sons and your daughters. And this is one of the problems that we suffer from right here in San Diego, in California, on the West Coast, the United States, New York City, wherever you go. There are those who have been given wisdom, but they don't pass it on. They don't teach it to the next generation. There's a huge gap between the 18-year-olds, the 16-year-olds, the 15-year-olds, and the 50, 60, and 70-year-olds. And the older brothers and sisters, they say the young generation is lost. Like the Pepsi logo. The new generation, the next generation is dead. That's what it says. The new generation is dead. It's lost. In all aspects of the word dead and lost. You talk about style, fashion, respect, crime, even when you talk about music. They say that the music that the people produce today is trash. It's nothing like the old stuff. But whose fault is it that the new generation is lost? Who raised the new generation? Who taught the new generation? Obviously the new generation had to come from someone and had to grow from the feet of someone. And the new generation, they blame the old generation. They say you guys are outdated. You're archaic. You guys are dinosaurs. You're stuck in the past. It is not the 70s, the 60s, the 80s. That's done. That's over. The 90s era of what? It's not the 90s anymore. This is a reality. Everyone understand this? So I'm not talking about music being permissible. We're trying to make an example. We're trying to make an example. They say this is the 90s hip hop anymore. It's a brand new generation. That old school stuff that you're saying was the best stuff, that's done. It's a new time period. So we have the old and we have the new. And one of the problems when we have this big, severe, gaping gap is because the wisdom isn't passed down. Or the wisdom is offered, but the young people don't seek it. And they don't have the necessary patience to learn it. And it's another very important part of the story is that Luqman wasn't just wise with himself or to himself. But he was wise and he taught his son wisdom. And the greatest of that wisdom was strengthening, establishing, and solidifying the relationship between his son and his Lord. And his son treating himself with respect, and his son treating the other human beings with what? With respect, as we've just stated. So that's the focal point of the story, is hikmah, is wisdom. So what do the people of knowledge say regarding this word, al-hikmah? معنى الحكمة لغة الحكمة مشتقة من كلمة الحكمة وهو ما أحاط بحنك الفرس سميت بذلك لأنها تمنعه من الجري الشديد وتظل الدابة لراكبها حتى تمنعها من الجناح ومنه اشتقاق لحكمة لأنها تمنع صاحبها من أخلاق الأراذل وأحكم الأمر أي أتقنه فاستحكم ومنعه عن الفساد أو منعه من الخروج عما يريد. The word hikmah is similar to the word aql in the Arabic language. Intellect. Some people translate aql, or others they say smarts, having a brain. The word hikmah is extracted from one or two usages in Arabic. And we know that the root word is ha, kaf, and mim. And those who study the Arabic language, they know is that there is a science of the sound of the letters and the sounds of the words. Words being combined and how they sound. When you hear the word hakama, it's not like the word sahula. Hakama, ahkama. The way it sounds proves something. It's not the same. You say sab and you say sahal. The way that you say the word and pronounce the word you have is a feeling behind it. And that's a whole science in itself in the Arabic language. So hakama is the root word of the word hikmah. And there's two main usages in the Arabic language. Number one is the word al-hakama. Al-hakamatu is basically a muzzle or a rein that goes into the horse's mouth or the camel's mouth. the muzzle and the rein that you use to pull, steer, control, and dominate the riding beast. The animal, the horse, is a wild horse, ready to move fast, to throw you off of his back. You use it to slow it down. You use it to steer in a direction, and you use it from jumping and being reckless into jumping. This is what the word al-hakama. And the second meaning is ahkam yani atqan, is to be a very good craftsman, to be extremely skilled with your hands and your fingertips, and your amal is muhkam, it's mastered, it's done, it's finished. You don't have to touch it. I carved this myself. It's nothing else that's needed. It's polished. It's solid oak wood. It'll last you for the rest of your life. You can pass it on to your son because I'm a master craftsman. Or what you talk about, jewels or metal or whatever the craft is. And we look at a water skin. Back in the day, people didn't have these things. Thermos, steel flasks, glass flasks. They drank from water skins oftentimes. And if you left it open, there could be a bug or an insect or a critter or dust or dirt that would get into your milk or your water, and it would corrupt your drink. So what did you do with the water skin? You put it tight. They say a drawstring. This is what the word hikmah linguistically means. It comes from is to tighten something. It's to fasten something, to make a tight knot, and to control the animal from moving and jumping unless it's how you want it to move and how you want it to jump. And that's similar to the word aql. The aql comes from the iqal. And the iqal is what you use to control the camel from biting you or going wild and going crazy. And its connection with the technical meaning is hikmah and aql is supposed to prevent you from being stupid. It's supposed to prevent you from being foolish and dumb. It's supposed to stop your nafs from being wild and out of control. And that is summed up in the word being a fool. You're foolish. I want to sleep, I want to rest, but I know I have an exam to study for. And if I fail the exam, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. It's going to be major problems if I fail this exam. But it's alright. I'll wake up in 10 minutes, I'll hit the snooze button. And you're dead tired. What are the chances of you getting up in 10 minutes? What are the chances of you getting up in 30 minutes? You went to sleep and you're exhausted and you have to study for a test. You are a fool. Thinking that you can just crash study at the last second on time. You're foolish. So being dumb, being stupid, and being foolish, no one wants. No one wants to be called dumb and stupid. You can be weak physically. You may not be the most handsome person, but no one wants to be called slow. And one of the first things that a young man or young woman wants to do and wants to be when they grow up, and they're trying to grow old fast. Don't try to play me like I'm a little kid, don't think I'm what? Slow. And this is one of the reasons why we have so much crime in certain cities and certain towns, because young children want to grow up too fast, and the older people are playing them like they're slow. And I'm going to show you that I'm not slow. I'm going to show you that I understand and I'm not slow, and that's a problem. So the concept of hikmah and aql is meant to prevent you and protect you from doing something that you shouldn't do. And that's what wisdom basically is. It's not just having information, it's not just having a collection of facts, but it's to know the truth and to have the pull and the control over your nafs to implement the truth. Now, as far as what some of the ulama of Islam said regarding hikmah is, first and foremost is we have a quote from Al-Harawi. He says, Al-hikmatu ismun li-ihkami wad'i shay'i fi mawdi'ihi. As far as the word hikmah in the Quran and the Sunnah, when we read the books of tafsir, when Allah Azza wa Jal mentions, and whoever is given wisdom, then he has been given a great deal of good. Some of the Sahaba, such as Abdullah ibn Abbas, they said, Al-ma'rifa bil-Quran. Al-ma'rifa bil-Quran. Wa nasikhihi, wa mansukhihi, wa halalihi, wa haramihi, wa muqaddamihi, wa mu'akharihi. He said that hikmah of the Quran is to know the rulings of the Quran. What's lawful, what's unlawful. When Allah sends down a verse, and He makes a rule, and then Allah sends down another verse later on and He changes that rule, like the Qibla. It was abrogated, it was cancelled, it was no longer a ruling. But we want a more general definition of the word hikmah in the Quran and in the Sunnah, and what the people say. So from those who have a definition of the term hikmah is Abu Ismail al-Harawi, rahimahullah. He says, Ismun li-ihkami wad'i shay'i fi mawdi'ihi. It is a term used to perfectly and precisely place something in its proper place. Placing something in its proper place is one thing. This is the shelf where this flask belongs. So I do what? I put it there. Is the thermos on the shelf? Did I place it in its proper place? I did. Don't say no, I did. This is where it belongs, and I did what? I placed it. Correct or incorrect? Did I place it? But it doesn't mean that I placed it what? In a proper manner. إحكام وضع الشيء. انتبه الآن للفرق. وضع الشيء في موضعه هذا شيء. إحكام وضع الشيء. Placing the thing in its proper place in a what? Perfect manner. Everyone understand this? Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, الحكمة فعل ما ينبغي على الوجه الذي ينبغي في الوقت الذي ينبغي. Ibn al-Qayyim says, hikmah, wisdom, is to do what needs to be done. It's to do not what you want to do, but do what has to be done in the proper manner, at the proper time. We say to be smooth. I didn't have to make a whole sentence, just one statement. I didn't have to make a whole entire paragraph, just one sentence. In a smooth, eloquent way, which no one can differ and disagree on. That's being smooth, and being smooth is a part of hikmah. It's to do and to say what's what? Necessary. In the way that is what? Necessary, but most importantly, everything in life is based off of what? Timing. You came too late. You said it too late. You did it too late. You have to be what? Right on time with what you do and what you say. That's proper. That was Ibn al-Qayyim's definition of al-hikmah. Moving forward. Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, الحكمة عبارة عن العلم المتصف بالأحكام المشتمل على المعرفة بالله تبارك وتعالى المسحوب بالنفاذ البصيرة وتهذيب النفس وتحقيق الحق والعمل به والصد عن اتباع الهوى والباطل والحكيم من له ذلك. انتهى كلامه رحمه الله تعالى. No, he said hikmah is a phrase and it's used for knowledge of the rulings, and that goes back to the word that we previously mentioned, ahkam. The ruling of something is based off of its hikmah, its wisdom. So knowing what's halal and what's haram, that's in the deen. In life, knowing how to drive a car, knowing how to own a home, knowing how to run a successful house, how to be a good father, how to be a good mother, a coach on a team. You have to know how to inspire your players, encourage your players, how to make your players feel bad when they mess up and make mistakes, but don't cause them to despair. And get them, by Allah's permission, to win the game. You have to know the rulings. He says, Al-Mushtamilu ala al-ma'rifati billahi ta'ala. And at the top of the list is knowing Allah, the Mighty and the Most High. So you can't be wise if you don't know Allah. You cannot be wise if you don't know who your Creator is. And if you do not know who made you and who fashioned you and who deserves to be worshipped alone without any partner. That's first and foremost. And Allah's names and attributes, there's no wisdom. And those who say, Tariqat al-Salafi aslam, wa Tariqat al-Khalafi a'lam wa ahkam. When it comes to the old school and the new school, when it comes to the different aqidah in Islam and the creeds of Islam, the way of the Salaf is the safest route. It's the safest route. And the way of the later generations is a'lamu wa ahkamu. It's more scientific and contains more wisdom. That's a lie, and that can't be true. And that's because if you don't affirm Allah's attributes, and if you do not describe Allah in the manner in which He has described Himself, then you don't know Allah. You have no knowledge of Allah if everything is figurative, and it really doesn't mean this. And 30 attributes all have one general meaning. Iradat al-thawabi wal-in'am. 30 characteristics of Allah, you give them all the same interpretation. That's not knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we know that perfection is manifested in diversity of names and qualities. Titles. Why do generals wear the things on their chests? They show you the things that they have accomplished and obtained. This war, a veteran of this one, that he has accomplished things. The more attributes and qualities a person has, it leads to that person's perfection. So if you do not know Allah Azza wa Jal, then you cannot be wise. If you don't know who Allah is, as He has said about Himself, it's impossible to be what? To be wise. No way He says, Al-Mashubi binafadhi al-basira. And another condition of wisdom is that you have to have piercing insight. You have to be able to see through things and people. And you have to be able to see things before they happen. As a wise man, supposedly, quote unquote, once said. He says to hear thunder is no sign of sharp hearing. To see lightning is no sign of sharp sight. To lift an autumn hair is no sign of strength. No. You have to see the victory or the defeat before it manifests itself. You have to have foreknowledge of what's going to happen. And this foreknowledge isn't something spooky. It isn't something mystical. It isn't something pertaining to sin. No. Foreknowledge is based on experience. Experience, and that's the concept of al-qiyas. فَاعْتَبِرُوا يَا أُولِي الْأَبْصَارِ. Allah says, use a bridge, O men of understanding. Use ubur. You start at one place, you go to the destination, and you return to your origin. I.e., what happened to these people, how Allah saved this person, how Allah destroyed this person, is the same thing that's going to happen to someone 1,000, 2,000, Allah, how many years later? You make qiyas. It's the same thing. So I can foresee, inshallah, that you're going to be successful. Inshallah ta'ala. You seem like a humble young man, a respectful young man, a hard-working young man. Only Allah knows the unseen, but I doubt it very highly that you'll be an unsuccessful person. And I can see, and Allah knows best, that you're going to be a failure in life because you have no respect for your elders. You have no respect for yourself. You're lazy, you're lethargic, you have a smart and sarcastic mouth. You don't want to do anything, or you're spoiled, rotten. Your parents give you everything, you have to work for nothing. I can't see you being successful later on in life. And in most cases, that's what's going to happen. How? Because of previous experiences. So you have to have the basira that pierces and penetrates. You have to be able to see things before they take place. And this is manifested in sports. It's manifested in reading the defense when you play football. You know how to read the defense, you throw less interceptions. You know how to make a pump fake. You know what defense they're showing you. It's a zone blitz. It's a zone blitz. You know when to call a screen pass, when to do this, when to do a draw, when to take off scramble and leave the pocket. Because your basira, it pierces and penetrates and it goes beyond that which is in front of you. He says, وَتَهْذِيبِ النَّفْسِ, and purification of the soul. You cannot be a wise person and you make your soul dirty and filthy. As Allah Azza wa Jalla says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ, it says it's successful those who do what? Purify their souls. وَقَدْ خَابَ, and then those who ruin their souls, they're losers. They're not wise people. So an important part of wisdom is purifying the soul. وَتَحْقِيقِ الْحَقِّ, and actualizing and manifesting the truth. وَالْعَمَلِ بِهِ, you can't be wise if you're sinful and disobedient. You can't be wise if you don't act upon what you know yourself. And there's another problem with regards to father and son, or mother and daughter, or mother and son and father and daughter. And that's why we make excuses for ourselves. When we say, do as I say and not as I do. Do what I say, son. Don't do what you see me doing. You can say that as much as you want to do, but actions speak louder than words. Tell your son not to smoke cigarettes. It's bad, son. Listen to me. But you keep smoking cigarettes. The chances are is that your son is going to smoke cigarettes, even though you told him not to do it. And that's because the human being is more attracted to action than statement. So a part of wisdom is you implementing it and acting upon it yourself. He says in this wisdom, al-mashhub, he says, it accompanies وَالصَّدِّ عَنِ اتِّبَاءِ الْهَوَى وَالْبَاطِلِ, and it must prevent you from being lustful and following your lust and your low base desires, which all humans have. Some have more than others. Following your lust, your hawa. You know it's destructive, you know it's haram, you know it's ruinous, but your soul is craving that thing. If you fall victim to your cravings, you cannot be called a wise person. Last but not least, he says, وَالْحَكِيمُ مَنْ لَهُ ذَلِكَ, and that is who is Hakim. Is the one who has all of those characteristics and qualities. Khayran, inshallah. So let's get into the story. Allah Azza wa Jalla, he says, after we seek his refuge from the accursed shaitan, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ الْحِكْمَةَ أَنِ اشْكُرْ لِلَّهِ وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ حَمِيدٌ. Allah says, and indeed we have granted Luqman wisdom. And we explained this. And the first point we learn from this is that wisdom is minnatun ilahiyah. It's a gift from Allah. But it doesn't mean that you can't try and strive to obtain it. Just like taqwa and just like guidance. Allah starts it off by giving you the gift, but there are reasons behind it being firm. There are reasons behind you solidifying that wisdom and building upon that wisdom and polishing that wisdom. And what was the first responsibility of Luqman? Anushkur lillah. It's to thank Allah. Thank me for giving you the wisdom. And what happens when you thank Allah, brothers and sisters? You're doing a favor for Allah. You're helping out Allah. Allah says, whoever thanks and shows gratitude, then he's doing it for himself and not for Allah. And you must teach your sons and your daughters this. Son, while you're doing the right thing, it's not helping me. You're not thanking me. It's not respecting me, but in actuality, you're respecting yourself. And when you disrespect yourself, you can't expect no one else to respect you. So oftentimes we make ourselves the most important thing. That's because we have egos. Everything is about the father and the mother. Respect your mother. Obey your mother. Do this. Be good at school for your mother. That's important. But most importantly, the thing that's going to remain with them in most cases is the value of their own self. Don't go outside dressed like that because you're disrespecting yourself. Don't smoke. Don't drink. Don't get a tattoo on your face and your neck because you're disrespecting yourself. Don't get a tattoo any part of your body, let alone on your face or your neck. You're disrespecting yourself. And you're announcing to the world that you're a foolish person. So we have to instill this in our children, is that thanks and gratitude are for Allah Azza wa Jal. And those who show thanks and gratitude, you're not helping out Allah, but you're actually only helping out your own self. Allah Azza wa Jal says, and whoever disbelieves, then Allah is Ghaniyun Hamid. Allah is Ghani, self-sufficient. There's nothing that you can even say to compare to what Allah has of self-sufficiency, of wealth. Ghani. He needs nothing from no one. He needs no donation from anyone. And look at the beauty of the Quran. Allah says, who will give Allah a good loan? Who will give Allah a good loan? Look at the mercy and the kindness of Allah. And look how Allah Azza wa Jal draws himself near to his servants. Who will give me a good loan? Does Allah need your loan? Is it helping out Allah? No, it's not. But Allah Azza wa Jalla inspires and encourages you to give sadaqah, and He calls it qardan hasanan, a good loan. And we all know, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى, there's no comparison between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His created beings. But the concept, Allah says you will see Allah, the Prophet says you will see Allah like you see the moon, Laylat al-Badr. If there was a man who came up to you, and the man was very wealthy and very influential, or at one point in time he was wealthy and influential, and this man is known to be a mover and a shaker. He was a major person in his time or in his day, before he went to jail, before he lost his business, whatever the case may be. And he says, listen, I need to borrow some money. I'm going to give you back your money in such and such amount of time. I'm a little down and out. Can you help me out? In most cases, the smart person is going to give that man the money. And that's because, number one, he has a clean record and he's trustworthy. He's going to pay me back my money. And 9 out of 10 times, he'll never ever forget what I did for him when he was down and out. And that is when he's back on top like he was, he's not going to forget it, and he's going to give me much, much more than what I gave him. So only a foolish person would resist and hesitate in loaning that wealthy, rich, powerful person that money. So just think about that now. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He calls it a good loan, and He increases it and multiplies it. So you give Allah, quote unquote, a little bit, Allah will give you back what you spent, and what? Much, much more. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says Hamid, and He's praised in all situations. For whoever disbelieves and disbelieves, Allah is praised, the Mighty and the Most High. وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ يَا بُنَيَّ لَا تُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّ الشِّرْكَ لَظُلْمٌ عَظِيمٌ. Allah says, and remember when Luqman was admonishing his son, and the very first thing that he told his son is to know Allah, is to love Allah, is to be connected to Allah, and never disrespect Allah. Don't make shirk with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's because it's the worst thing that you can possibly do. It's to compare the one who's perfect from all aspects to someone who's deficient in all aspects. That's the worst thing that you can do. And that's the pinnacle of foolishness. It's the one who gave you everything that you had, and then show thanks and gratitude for someone who did nothing for you. And that is going back to wisdom once more. Shirk doesn't go hand in hand with wisdom. Tawheed, there lies no doubt, makes total and perfect sense. Allah is the only creator, the only sustainer, therefore He will be the only ma'bud. And if you believe that Allah is the only one who helped you and did things for you, why would you thank someone else? So Luqman alayhi salam, first and foremost, he told his son not to make shirk. That was the first piece of advice. Moving forward, Allah says, وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ وَهْنًا عَلَى وَهْنٍ. Then Allah says, and we have enjoined upon man to be respectful, kind and obedient to his parents. These two verses here are not the words of Luqman. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He mentions these two ayah in the middle of the story of Luqman's speech. And it's very important to understand the Quranic style. A verse begins with Allah speaking directly, or a verse begins, وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ, the messenger said, this person said, the king said, their prophet said, and then Allah will speak in the middle of the story. And a non-Muslim or an Orientalist or someone will come along and say, the Quran doesn't make any sense. It supports polytheism. Allah speaks and the Prophet speaks and it says, fear me at the end of the ayat. They don't understand the Quranic style. So this story of Luqman, these verses are not a part of the what? The story of Luqman. When Allah says, وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانِ, and we have advised man to respect his parents. That is not a part of the what? The discourse between Luqman and his what? And his son. That's not a part of the discourse. Everyone understand this? And this is very important for us to understanding the Quran properly. Moving forward, Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says that Luqman alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, يا بني إنها إن تكن مثقال حبة من خردل فتكون في الصخرة أو في السماوات أو في الأرض يأتي بها الله إن الله لطيف خبير يا بني أقم الصلاة وأمر بالمعروف ونهى عن المنكر واصبر على ما أصابك إن ذلك من عزم الأمور. Allah Azza wa Jal, He then commands, or He then tells the Luqman, commands his son once more to obey Allah and to respect Allah and to be mindful and conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is manifested in Allah's infinite knowledge and Allah's omnipotence and His power. No matter how small, no matter how subtle, no matter how minute a thing may be, Allah knows of it and Allah has power over it. So don't think that you can escape Allah. I will get old, I will pass, I will die. You may not listen to me and obey me, but Allah always sees you. Allah never dies. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching you no matter where you go. And if we've instilled this in our children, we have obtained a great success. And that hijab is not just for a country. Salah is not just for a country. Piety and righteousness and respect is not just for a country. And it's not just respect me. And many parents, they make this mistake. Their children are obedient to them, but to their teachers, they're evil. They're disrespectful to another person, a stepmother, a stepfather. And that's not the proper tarbiyah. You must teach your son and your daughter, anyone who's a grown-up must be respected, period. Bottom line, anyone who's a grown-up is to be respected. And many people, we only teach our children to respect and to obey us. And that's wrong. So Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says that if it's a mustard grain, a mustard seed, no matter how small it is, Allah Azza wa Jalla will manifest it, He will bring it out. So be mindful is that your relationship with Allah Azza wa Jalla is universal. And the commandments of Allah are universal. There's no time, there's no place in which a person is only to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this must be instilled in the child. Moving forward, Luqman alayhi salam, he told his son to establish the prayer, enjoin the good, forbid the evil, and be patient upon that which befalls you. And ذَلِكَ مِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. Be patient upon hardships and difficulties. Be patient upon that. As Umar radiallahu anhu was quoted to have said, إِخْشَوْشِنُوا فَإِنَّ النِّعْمَ لَا تَدُومُ. He says, be rough and tough. Have the ability to be rough and tough, because bounties do not remain forever. Have the ability to walk, because the car may not always be there. Have the ability to park and to turn and to steer without the camera, because you may be in a car that's much older. If you don't know how to park, you can't back out without the camera, you may be in a situation in which there is no camera. So nothing will ever be like the original traditional way. And that is the concept of East meets West, old school versus new school. Teach your sons and daughters the ways of the old, but do not allow them to be stuck and frozen in the past, because you never know when the technology will not work. What happens now if my iPad goes blank? If the battery dies, then what? I have nothing to read, I have no knowledge. That's going to be what? That's a major problem. Moving forward, Luqman alayhi salam, he told his son, وَلَا تُصَعِرْ خَدَّكَ لِلنَّاسِ وَلَا تَمْشِ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ كُلَّ مُخْتَالٍ فَخُورٍ. Before that, he says, وَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا أَصَابَكَ. Be patient upon what befalls you. And the benefit that we take from this is to teach your children, everyone is not going to be your friend. And life isn't always rosy and peachy. People will differ with you. They'll disagree with you. And do not be a yes man and do things and say things only to obtain the pleasure of the people. That's a tremendous life lesson. I believe it's time for the adhan now. 9:20. What time is it? 4 more minutes. Khayr, inshallah. Very important life lesson, brothers and sisters. Everyone is not going to be your friend. Everyone is not going to agree with you. Train your children to have this mindset from day one. I do this because it makes me happy, not because it makes the next man happy. Luqman alayhi salam, he then said, "Waqsid fi mashika wala," he says, and when you walk moderately. Walk balanced. Don't walk too fast. Don't walk too slow. Don't be too hard. Don't be too soft. Waqsid fi mashik. Be moderate. And obviously it's greater than just walking. But it's teaching the child balance. Be balanced, son. Dress nice. Be presentable. Smell good. But don't be too pretty. Don't be too fragile. Don't be too conscious over your appearance. Be mindful of that. You teach your daughter to be ladylike, to be dainty. But at the same time, do not allow anyone to oppress you and to wrong you. And think that it's easy pickings because you're a woman and you're a female. But be balanced. Be right in the middle. Don't be a coward, nor try to act like you're a tough guy. Self-defense is one thing. Wisdom is one thing. Balance and moderation is one thing. You don't have to fight yourself and try to be too tough. And how many problems do children find themselves in because they don't have balance? In a gunfight, it's the fake tough guy that gets shot first. In a fist fight, a knife fight, it's the one that's running his mouth and acting tough is the one who gets hurt first. And the cool-headed, moderate person is, in most cases, the last to be included in the fight. Teach your children balance and moderation in deen and in dunya, money, looks, whatever you do, video games, balance. Be moderate. Don't sit in front of a video game all day. But at the same time, you've worked hard, you've studied the Quran, you've done your chores, fadl. You let them play a video game. And we've done a khutbah before, and we talked about video games and the benefits of video games. The good in video games. Video games that are proper, and if it's done in the proper way, it is a great deal of good that can be taken from a video game. And from the greatest benefits of video games is teaching children how to follow instructions and obey rules. How to follow instructions and obey rules. Wallahi, you may give your son a lecture. You may beat your son with a belt. You may put your daughter on punishment because they didn't obey the rules and didn't follow instructions. And they may do it in 2 seconds from a video game. You can't get from one board to the next unless you do what? What do you have to do? You have to follow the instructions. And you have to follow the rules. The arrow is pointing this way. This is glowing. This is the icon that you have to get. You can't do what you want to do. And you teach your children, وَهَكَذَا, that's life. If you want to do it successfully, you got to follow the right way. Just think about that now. Have you ever heard about this before? You ever think about this? Video games are evil, it's haram. That's all you hear about video games. And that's not absolutely true. Let alone the fact that video games have come and they aren't going, what? Anywhere. So if video games aren't going anywhere, then at least we can do what? Try to reap somewhat? Benefit from them. It's very important. And as a parent, you have to realize it's 2019. You can take your son, he'll find it what? In another place. He'll get it in another location. So the best thing to do is to teach him how to take the benefit from it. Wallahu ta'ala. Moving forward. وَغْضُضْ مِنْ صَوْتِكَ إِنَّ أَنْكَرَ الْأَصْوَاتِ لَصَوْتُ الْحَمِيرِ. Never yell, never holler, never scream, and most importantly, never be a loud mouth. Someone that talks too much, that runs his or her mouth, that speaks too loudly. Be subtle, be balanced. This is a very important lesson to teach your children. And Luqman alayhi salatu wasalam, he told his son, and he says, in the worst voices, la sawtul hamir, is the brain of the ass, of the donkey, an animal that lacks intelligence, an animal that is strong, powerful, but it lacks the brilliance mentally. Now we talk about a donkey, an example that people make with donkeys. كمثل الحمار, a donkey that carries books. There's a very, very long discussion with regards to the donkey in the Quran and in the Sunnah. What's important is, these are some benefits and a brief, simple, humble commentary, ta'liqat, on this tremendous story. The proper time, the proper setting to break it down verse by verse, word by word, it obviously isn't in one lecture. And hopefully I believe that inshallah ta'ala we've قد ألقينا بعض الأضواء we've shed some type of light on the story, its importance, and the greatest part of this story is wisdom. And that's why Allah mentioned that first and foremost. We have given Luqman wisdom. And then he told Luqman what to do, to thank Allah. And then he begins by saying what Luqman said to his son of ta'lim al-hikmah, teaching him wisdom. And on top of that are the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the rights of the nafs, and the rights of the what? Of the people. And if you have done that by Allah's permission, you're on the road of being a successful parent. A successful parent. The Prophet ﷺ, he says that there are 7 people on the day of judgment that shall receive the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A day in which there's no cover, no shade, unless it's the shade that Allah provides. And we all know the very first one, he says, Imamun Adilun, is a just ruler. وَشَابٌ نَشَأَ فِي طَاعَةِ رَبِّهِ, and it's the youth, the young man, the young woman who grows up worshiping and obeying Allah. So if that's the reward of the young man and of the young woman, then what is the reward of the parent, the guardian who raised that young man and that young woman? If he gets the reward and the fruit of growing up being pious and righteous, then what will happen with the parent and the guardian? So it's very important and very virtuous. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best. We ask Him by His beautiful names and perfect attributes to allow us to benefit from this story, implement this story, and to make our households better, our homes better, our masjids better, our countries better, and everything better, pleasing to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't know if there's questions after the adhan, before the iqamah. If there's time, I don't mind taking some of them if there are any questions. Wallahu a'lam.